Hey guys, Marcus Buff Bagwell here. And man, I got a good one for us. July 9th, 2001 was the worst day ever in my entire life. It was the day the WWE slash WWF at the time released me. And let me say that again, release me, because that'll play a part in the end here. And I want to say before I tell this story, I loved the WWF. I still love the WWE. I love the product. I love this. I love the business. I'm just telling a story that happened to me. This is what happened. This ain't my side of the story. This is not my opinion of the story. This is what happened. So anybody that listens to it, I'm not complaining. I'm just explaining what happened to me. It was the worst day in my entire life. So leading up to July 9th was July 1st. It was Sunday, July 1, 2001. I wrestled a house show with, it was Buff Bagwell versus Booker T in a house show in Seattle. Great match, no problems. Me and Booker wrestled hundreds of times. Never had a glitch. Not the least bit awkward in the ring. Chemistry great. Everything fantastic. So we do the house show in Seattle. The next day's Monday Night Raw. Keep in mind, I've got no idea what tomorrow is bringing in. Me and Booker T we're not main event of that show, of the house show. We just have a match on there. Well, I show up to Monday Night Raw, and it's, the next day in Tacoma, and it's Buff Bagwell and Booker T main event on Monday Night Raw. It was crazy. So the first thing, I think of is, wait a second, Atlanta's the next week. Why are we doing this? So I go to Booker, and Booker's like, why are we doing this? And we don't know. But again, we're both scared to death. We don't know if we're hired, if we're fired. We're just trying to fit in the best we can. And so with that said, they come around and they give us finishes of what's going on, but nobody gave us our finish. That's where the start of this story goes wrong. Johnny Ace, and we didn't know this till the end, but Stone Cold came up to me and Booker T and told us what was happening for the finish. Now, keep in mind, we don't know how it works there because we've never been at the WWF at the time. We hadn't been there, so we didn't know how it worked. Well, Stone Cold was Stone Cold Steve Austin. So if he comes up and tells you what to do, you do it. He came up and explained, Bagwell, when you start your heat, when Booker starts his comeback, me and Kurt are going to hit the ring. We're going to beat Booker up. You join us. You help us beat Booker up. And then when we get to the back, we'll, boot Booker out, and we'll boot you outside too. So understood everything. Gotcha. Now the question, now that we know what's going to happen for the finish, me and Booker go over the match together. But the whole time we're wondering, why are we doing this a week before Atlanta? This angle was called the invasion. So it just wasn't good that we were doing this a week early. It didn't feel right. Looking back, it was like fully felt totally wrong. Like, why are we doing this? But again, we're not going to ask and get in trouble. We're going to do what we're told. So I'm back in the back trying to get ready, kind of right around go position. And I remember out of nowhere, Shane McMahon appeared. And as soon as I saw him, I remember having the feeling in my body like, looking to see if anybody sees Shane talking to you. So I remember looking around, and there wasn't another set of eyes nowhere. And Shane McMahon goes, don't look in the camera. And I said, Shane, that's what I do, man. That's what I do. I look in the camera, I pose, and I wrestle the best match I can. He goes, if you look in the camera, you're fired. And he didn't say it ugly, but that's pretty rough. Don't look in the camera, you're fired. So what I ask you as the listener to do for me is go back and watch a couple of previous Buff Bagwell matches and count how many times I talk into the camera, and then go watch me and Booker T and count how many times I talk in the camera, which is 0, because I didn't want to be fired. I was following the rules I was taught by my boss. My boss told me not to look in the camera. My boss told me to wrestle in Tacoma. I disagreed with both, but I did what I was told because he's our boss. That's what you do. You do what your boss says. I didn't know it at the time, but I've heard interviews with Booker. They told Booker kind of the same thing. Get to the ring, don't shake hands. So it's really weird they did all this for whatever reason, but it wasn't a good, like I said, it wasn't a good feeling that we knew that this didn't feel right. You put Booker T and Buff Bagwell in Atlanta, Georgia the next week, and I think it would have been a much bigger success. But that's not what happened. We're in Tacoma, we do the match, and I've heard so many times how bad that match was. I dare somebody to say that to my face. There's not one mistake in that match. It may not have been a great match, but you judge matches by the mistakes you see in them. There wasn't one bad punch. There wasn't a bad kick. There wasn't anything missed. A clothesline that was supposed to be dug that didn't. There wasn't one miscue in that entire match. But people believed what they heard, which was I got fired because of a bad match. If that was the case, there'd be somebody fired every week. But regardless, that's the story that was told. And so me and Booker go out, we do this match, and we get to the back. And we get to the back, me and Booker are kind of bickering over, because now we've been told it was a bad match. And Booker was like, well, Bagwell was winded, and I was winded. But again, that don't make it a bad match, but I was winded more than I thought. The 20-foot ring shocked me a little bit. But Johnny Ace, when me and Booker started bickering a little bit, he goes, hey guys, don't bicker like this. He goes, it's our fault. And again, this is a story that nobody knows, but this is the facts. He said, Pat Patterson does the main events for the WWF. And so Pat Patterson thought that Johnny Ace came to us and went over the match. Johnny Ace thought Pat Patterson came to us to go over the match. Neither Johnny or Pat came to us to go over the match. Stone Cold told us what he was doing. So not one boss overlooked me and Booker's match and told us what they wanted. So me and Booker went out and gave them what we thought they wanted, which was a WCW style match. Me and Booker agreed on the match we agreed on. We went out and performed that match. And, supposedly that's what got me released / fired. From that match, though, very depressing that they thought it was bad. And, me and Booker are kind of bickering. But there's the saving grace in it is that Johnny admitted that they didn't handle it right. So I hope that would help me and Booker not be the blame for having a bad match, as they called it, on Monday Night Raw. So that was Monday. July 2nd. So July 3rd, we fly home. So the 3rd or 4th, I get a phone call from Jim Ross. Jim Ross, me and Jim were great friends at the time. No crosswords ever between us. And he said, hey, Marcus, he goes, listen to me. He goes, I want you to take this weekend off. We want you to rest your head. This is when I had 20 staples in my head from the previous Helms thing. He said, I want you to rest your head. We got big plans for you on Monday night in Atlanta. And man, I went from being really depressed about, Monday Night Raw to really excited. Atlanta's coming up. It's going to be a big show. The WWF and Buff's working for them now. And man, I'm excited. I just got called by one of my bosses and told, you're off the house shows. Don't worry about it. And we'll see you Monday night, man. We got big plans for you. So that would have been on July 9th, So I show up excited and, bought probably 50 tickets for families and friends that show up, because you get 7 or 8 tickets, to give out, but then you got to buy the rest. So all my family and friends were coming and they're very excited. And I remember being in catering and seeing Vince around 3:00 and like, hey man, how's it going? And we shook hands and how's everything going, Marcus? Good. And, it was just good to see Vince. And again, remember the last thing I heard was there's big plans for me on Monday night. So a few minutes later, they said, hey, they want you down in this room down there. So I walk in and open the door. It's Johnny Ace, Jim Ross. I'm not sure if Vince was in there or not. I'm pretty sure Vince was kind of just floating, is what I would call it. But Johnny Ace and Jim were the main guys in there. And instantly, I didn't know what it was for, because think about it. At 21 years old in this business, I'd never had a job before, because my parents were wealthy and I never had a job. So if you never had a job before, you've never been fired before. So I'm looking around and it seems awkward, but I don't know what they want to talk to me about. Well, then all of a sudden, as they start talking, I go, oh my God, I'm getting fired. So as they're talking and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, they start calling what they're getting ready to do, release me. And so I raise my hand and I first say, are y'all firing me? And Johnny goes, Mark, you don't got to raise your hand. Please don't raise your hand. You ain't got to raise your hand. But no, we're not firing you. We're releasing you. As soon as he said that, I raised my hand again. He goes, Mark, you don't got to raise your hand. I said, Johnny, I feel like I have to. What's the difference of being released and fired? And they had an answer. And their answer was, if they release me, they could bring me back in 3 months. And if they fire me, they'd have to redo my contract. Well, hearing that, again, milliseconds to make an answer, I acted like I understood, which I didn't. I took the most positive thing out of that. I heard, bring me back in 3 months. That's what I heard. I didn't hear the word fired. I heard the word released. I never, through this entire journey, heard the word fired. I saw it written, but I never was spoken to, hey, Buff, you are fired. I heard I was released for 3 months. I called back in 3 months and 2 weeks. I waited so I didn't do it early. And Jim Ross acted like I was crazy to call back. And I said, Jim, I'm just calling back because y'all told me to. Y'all told me to call y'all in 3 months. So here's my phone call. And he goes, well, Mark, we don't have anything for you. And I said, Jim, thank you very much. I just wanted to call so I didn't do something that you guys told me to do. So I remember it was just crazy on the callback. But going back to the day, July 9th, I remember thinking, and I asked this in the room, when I finally realized I was being released and it was not good, I remember just shaking hands and smiling to everybody, thanking everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. Because I'm trying to end positive. I don't want to walk out negative. So then I ask them, I go, what's it going to look like with me taking my bags out of here? And they act like I was crazy. Like, they were like, what do you mean? I go, if I start walking out with my bags, everybody's going to be like, where are you going, Bagwell? And I'll be like, I just got released. Is that okay? And so I can't really remember what the answer was, but I just kind of wobbled my bags out to the back, trying to not be noticed. And then when I got outside, I remember I started crying, and a white Explorer pulled up and it was Chris Benoit and his wife. And I remember just totally crying at this stage. He's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "Dude, I think I just got fired." I said, "They called it release, but I don't know, man. It's crazy." So I'm going home. And so I hugged Chris and said goodbye to Chris. I get in my $85,000 car, drive into my $1 million house. And as I'm looking at the car, drive into the house, both these things are gone. It's over. It's over, bro. July 9th, 2001 will go down as the worst day in my life ever. And it just kills me how that day went down. But the drive home, I remember calling my father, and he was they were getting ready. I think they were getting in the stands and everything. And I said, "Hey, you guys can come home." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm home." And he was like, "Oh." So I remember, I don't remember that night. I'm sure I went home and got extremely drunk and probably took several pills, but very depressed, very down. And that was the beginning of a 20-year addiction that I stayed sedated for 20 consecutive years there. And just, again, July 9th, 2001 will go down as the worst day of my entire life. Thanks, guys.